Okay, welcome everyone to the annual budget hearing. And it's nice to be here in the spring. We started this process in January. I'd like to thank the school board and many of the town departments and the Board of Selectmen, for everybody, and the Board of Finance for meeting a lot and coming up with what we feel is a reasonable budget. We started out in January learning that this Cornwall share of the high school budget was going to go up about over $400,000, which by itself would be a 6% increase in the town budget. So we put out, Joe and I put out a letter to town departments asking them to trim their requests, consider deferring capital projects, and look for additional sources of funding such as grants. So the response was good. A lot of people did trim their budgets and give us either a flat budget or a minimal increase. And we did, that wasn't mine.
Sorry.
It's okay. So we did have to defer some capital projects, and with the budget we came up with that, we did utilize some of our financial reserves, which we're lucky to have, and we are looking at a small tax increase. So we're able to wind up about where we thought we would, and again, through cooperation and a bunch of meetings and sharpening pencils, we're able to come up with something that's not a 6% tax increase. So getting into the nitty-gritty, I think everybody has their budget sheets, and turning, I think, to the, what would this be, the page 3, which says proposed budget. You can see where it's broken down by department for the town part, and you can see some big variations and many things not varying substantially. But some of these numbers don't really tell the whole story. For example, if you look at public safety, which has a 19% decrease, the reason that decrease happened was because last year we used $45,000 of ARPA funds to give stipends to our first responders and frontline workers, and that was a one-year revenue neutral event, so that came out, and the general public safety line, if you take that out, is pretty much the same as it was the year before. Underneath that, the register of voters is going up 38%, which sounds like a lot. In reality, that's about a $4,000 increase, and that increase is mostly because of the anticipated same-day voting, which the state is working on legislation to do that, and that would require our register and poll workers to be at the polls ahead of every vote, every election for 7 to 10 days. So they haven't quite figured that out, and it doesn't seem like that makes a particular amount of sense for a small town, so we are trying to modify that, but I'm not sure how much success we're going to have with that. And again, so training and staffing for that kind of thing sounds like a lot, but it's not a significant amount. If you look down at our total bottom line is a 0.969% decrease over last year's budget. So again, we were lucky to get cooperation from our departments and people doing what they could to hold the line. There are reasons for concern, though, and there are inflationary pressures that are out there that we haven't had in a couple of years, but we are concerned that, for example, the cost of health insurance is going up, fuel prices have gone up, the cost of getting rid of our garbage is going up. We do have a good initiative that hopefully people will be involved with a compost operation, which people can hear about tomorrow at the library at 3 o'clock. that will help us trim some of the costs of getting rid of our garbage, because we will be hopefully sending less garbage out of town. So again, but we are aware that there are inflationary pressures in today's economy that are hitting the town of Cornwall as much as anywhere else. So that is our operating part of the budget, and then we have the capital on the back page. Does anybody have any questions about anything I said? Now's a good time to ask any questions before I get into the capital. If you want to know what any departments are doing, there is not, we haven't changed focus that much. We have, for example, undertaken a lot of new programs with the Park and Recreation Commission, which I think is really important post-COVID, and but that is not costing the town a lot of money. But again, volunteers are doing a great job in providing necessary services. We have had a concerted effort also with public health and welfare to raise money and fund a lot of the social needs of people in town through the Food and Fuel Fund, and people have been very generous and supportive of that effort. I think I read the last month, I think they've had a record amount of people at our food pantry, and so I am in constant contact with our social worker to make sure that people who are struggling in town are getting what support we can give them. So there's a lot of activity that's going on in town. It's not necessarily all reflected in the budget. We have a new animal control officer, and again, there's a lot of activity going on. And if there's any questions about things, I see a hand in the back. Mr. Myers.
Gordon, would you speak to the town clerk expenses, please?
The town clerk expenses, they've gone up a bit because I believe that's mostly because Vera has hired an assistant looking at eventually training somebody for a replacement. So I think that's the major reason why that has gone up more than usual. So she has hired Kat Cheney to be her assistant, and although Vera will be running for office in this coming election, she plans to retire after that term. And it's a complicated job, so we are both very happy with that placement. And so, but it does require a lot of, training, and Kat will also be there, taking some regular hours when they're both there. So, okay. Barbara?
Can I just add on to that? The town clerk gets a state grant from the state library every year. So we put it in as income. It's line number 24, and that went up by $500. So that additional $500 is also reflected in the town clerk expense lines.
Peter?
The debt service for Cornwall Consolidated School?
Yes.
So it expires in August 2023?
Coming up.
Which is what is fiscal year 24?
Yes, next fiscal year.
So why are we still seeing no drop in the...
It's, if you look on your page 2 where it says debt service, I think there are 2 items there.
Partly it's because it's the last payment, so it's just pulling in whatever residual principal there is.
So it's half a year reflected there. So you see the debt service CCS, it drops in half.
So it goes from 350, the actual audit of last year's account, down to a 160 number, is what we're looking at now. And then I believe that will then go to 0 the following year. It's just the payments are made in the next fiscal year, so we have to make that happen. The last half payment is after the start of the...
Does that look right, Barbara? Page 2, or it says proposed budget, town of Cornwall, very first page that summarizes everything. Then you have the debt service CCS, and then it goes from 350 to 162, then 163.
Right,
And the question is, why is that not zero right there?
on the proposed budget?
Yes.
Because the last payment is made next fiscal year.
Okay.
Right, I understand why it's not zero, but it still seems, it's not, it's the same as the year when.
Yeah, so why are there two half-year payments? He's saying, why is it equal to, why is 22-23 equal to 20?
That's just the way the amortization schedule was set up.
Okay.
Okay,
It wasn't equal payments all the way across. They,
No, they were very variable.
Yeah.
so basically it tapers off for 2
Yeah.
years.
yeah,
Okay,
And if we look at next year when we'll be here, that line
will be zero.
for, right, the fund will be zero. Makes sense to me.
Okay, good question. Any other questions about this page or activities? Okay, so on the last page, you can see our capital projects. And we have, I guess, a major change is that Joe and I met with the school leadership, and we're aware of capital work that needs to be done in this building. So we decreased the town building upgrades to zero, and we gave half of the money that we had in the 5-year plan to the school, and the rest we just didn't use.
There was also, as you see, there's an existing balance of the town building upgrades that has been unspent. So we said, okay, why not postpone 2024 for the town buildings? We have the money in the account and bump up. The schools have had 40,000, as long as I can remember, for their capital budget, and it seems like they need a little bit more to catch up. So we went through their list of items that they're working on, and that seemed to be the appropriate number.
So then, yeah, going down, we did not put any money in for town building upgrades. We did put in $20,000 in the fire department equipment repair for a payment for air packs, new air packs. And we put $80,000 into the truck fund. We put $300,000 into the road improvement line, which again, the price of oil has gone up, so we're falling behind somewhat on that category, but we did some, we will continue to do some road resurfacing and repaving. And we have, the final thing is $10,000 for the town plan, which is implementing the town plan of 2020. We have the, as you may have read, a very active planning and zoning commission that is just completing a reformatting of their regulations, and they're going to be taking on some interesting current issues, including cannabis and affordable housing. So they are busy, and that pays for them to have a professional planner. So are there any questions on those capital allocations?
One question.
Yes.
So the town building line went down to zero. Half of that goes to school, half of that was
Yeah, that was, we had 150 in our 5-year plan, but we did not utilize that in this budget. So we have 158,000 in the capital account for town building repair. So that money should be sufficient in the coming year. Our projects to date, what we hope to do is we need to rebuild the chimney at the town garage, and we are going to start the process of looking at renovating the town hall, the big stone building, which needs work inside and out, so that's going to take some specialized work. So that's our next big thing, but we feel that we may have to hire a special architect or company to help us with that. So there's like a lot of things, a year of investigation before we actually may do some of the work. But those, in a tight year, there seem to be plenty to do what we feel we need.
So that estimated balance of 158, that remains despite...
Unspent,
Yeah.
unspent from prior years.
So the capital projects can go over from year to year.
Right. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And if there's not further questions, we can go over revenues. And as you can see, that's on the very first page. And as you can see, the town does not have a lot to look for there, so we are constrained. We see that federal, state, and local grants, we don't get a lot of them to start with, and they're usually, relatively flat, in this case down a bit. And then we can look at the net property taxes. That's a result of the grand list. And again, we can see not a lot of growth in the grand list. This would be new construction and additions, automobiles. So we see a pretty small bump there. So we didn't pick up a lot there that could offset the high school budget that we're anticipating. And then the next consideration for the Board of Finance becomes the mill rate. Given everything that we have, the budgets that have been presented to us, what the Region 1 budget, which we don't have any control over, what they're saying is going to be their number. We plug everything in, and basically we'll turn to the next page, which is the compilation, which goes horizontal. And it's a lot of numbers here, but we can kind of break it down a little bit. This is the page that helps the Board of Finance get an idea of how to set the mill rate. And we look at a lot of things, but if you go down almost basically to the bottom line, you have the third at the bottom would be the unappropriated general fund balance, UGFB. And so that is basically, you might call a rainy day fund. Those are our reserves that are unallocated in the bank. We need to keep a certain amount for emergencies and any kind of problems. I know a good example that I use is a bridge that washed out in West Cornwall a few years back. We had to pay for that out of pocket and then recoup state grants to pay us back, but in the meantime we paid for it. So these are like important funds that we keep. So how do we analyze how many funds we have in the bank as a rainy day? If you go down to the months of reserve, that's the key metric there. So those numbers in bold is the number of months we have in reserves. How long could we continue based upon our operating expenses dipping into reserve? Let's say we had nothing. So the state recommends 2 to 3 months in there. And as you can see, if you look historically, you can see how going back 10 years, we've always been in a pretty tight range, but it's been kind of creeping up a little. And part of that is on purpose, and part of that is the benefit of maybe higher collections. For a bunch of different reasons, you might have higher collections where someone pays their back taxes, properties come off tax benefits. So as you can see, we're kind of bumped up to 5. So we decided this year to tap into those. Given the high school situation, let's tap into those reserves. And so looking historically of basically we take the reserves and we apply them to the budget to lower the mill rate. So you can see what we've allocated from our reserves to lower the mill rate, and historically. And given that it's been rising, we decided to be aggressive this year. So we picked a number of $350,000 we're penciling that in. So we still have a chance to change that on the Board of Finance. But we penciled that in as what we think right now, prior to receiving feedback from the town, is an appropriate number to get that mill rate to a reasonable increase while keeping some reserves in anticipation of future problems or issues. Does anyone have a question about the reserves and how we handle that and how they affect the mill rate? Excellent. All right. So does anyone have any questions right now about the mill rate or the budget or anything that's been discussed tonight?
We will have a town meeting in a month's time
Right.
to vote on this, and
So that will be held Friday, May 19th, here, 7:30. One thing we should point out too is the Region 1 vote, which occurs at all the town halls. So that's Tuesday the 2nd from noon to 8. So if you're concerned about the high school budget, the only way you have a say is to show up and vote that day, Tuesday, May 2nd, at the town hall. That's our only control of that budget. And then we will, our board will meet again and take into consideration feedback from the town, and then we will make any adjustments, and then it will be like, it'll either be just as we see it now, or it could be a change. And then we have to vote on May 19th.
The town vote is May 19th?
Yes. So this is the hearing, and then we have the vote. In person.
There's a hearing on the...
This is the hearing.
this is the hearing, and the vote will be on the 19th in person here.
Be very similar to what we just did.
But the hearing is going to be on the regional budget?
So that will be, on May 2nd, you can go to town hall and vote on their budget
Okay,
that they've presented to the Region 1.
right.
So, and that's at the town hall in person from noon to 8 p.m.
I think Region 1 does have a hearing on their budget, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think we missed it. It was in
I think
April.
It already happened.
It already happened, their hearing.
Just last
Question?
week. Last week.
Yeah, I was just wondering, I know that the per pupil expenditure here in CCS is what, about 39,000 a year per pupil? And I just wondered what it was in the high school per pupil.
In the high
That's a
school.
good question.
That's a good question. I don't know. Does anyone know off the top of their head? I've got somebody here who knows. Simon.
Sorry, I haven't got my analysis.
Yeah.
I think it's higher.
We spent quite a lot of time looking at it.
If you want, give Simon your email before you leave, and he did a whole spreadsheet on it.
Okay.
These, I mean, both this school and that school have high per pupil cost, and that's
Sure.
basically a result of the fact there's low student population, and there's a lot of fixed costs,
Exactly. yeah.
right? So it's really hard to just look at it that way, and there's also requirements by the state of how many, you know, you have to have this teacher and that teacher, and these are big campuses as well, generally speaking, and it's, I know I spoke to the high school a bunch of times about, can you close any parts? Just, there's a lot of obstacles, and the plants are getting older, and it's really difficult, and I can understand why the taxpayers would be frustrated. But
And the
it's-
student population has dropped about 50%, and the high school hasn't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and yet you still want to, you know, provide a school that's, you know, you just, the students deserve a vibrant school, so it's definitely a challenge.
Okay, well, hearing no other comments, thank you all for coming. Thank you, Barbara, for getting it all straight.
Yeah.
Want my email?
You want to give it to me?
Okay.
I'm okay.
This will be on the Cornwall website.
Thank you. It's on the Cornwall website. See if you look better.
Send her